Hello, everyone. Welcome to the webinar, Expanding Access to Justice in Prisons and Beyond. This is the fourth presentation in the World Justice Challenge, a Year of Impact webinar series, where today we will speak with POS Foundation, a leading organization advancing criminal justice reform and access to justice in Ghana. My name is Lauren Kitts. I am the Director of Engagement at the World Justice Project, or WJP. Since 2019, WJP has operated a global prize competition called the World Justice Challenge, which recognizes impactful initiatives that strengthen the rule of law and that show the potential for uptake and replication in other contexts. Last year's competition took place in summer of 2022, where WJP awarded 5 winning projects an unrestricted cash prize for their excellence in advancing rule of law solutions. And so now 1 year later, we decided to hold this series of webinars to catch up with the winning organizations to see how their work has evolved over the past year and what they are continuing to do to strengthen the rule of law. So today we are going to be speaking with Jonathan Osei-Owusu, the founder and executive director of POS Foundation. Last year, POS Foundation was chosen as a challenge winner for their Justice for All program, which alleviates prison overcrowding by creating mobile courts within prisons in Ghana to adjudicate cases throughout the country. This program began in person in 2017, and in 2020, it pivoted to an innovative virtual format so that imprisoned individuals could continue to access justice, even amid the pandemic. The Justice for All program won the World Justice Challenge Alumni Vote Award, which was a special prize where the winner was chosen by the finalists who had participated in the challenge in the previous 2 cycles of the competition. So this was really quite a special acknowledgement to be recognized by a network of peers on their achievement and access to justice. Following the presentation, we will have a short discussion and invite questions from the audience. So to ask a question, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, submit your question in writing, and we will include it as part of the discussion. Okay, and so now I would like to officially introduce Jonathan Osei-Owusu, the founder and executive director of POS Foundation. Jonathan has more than 16 years of experience championing human rights and access to justice in Ghana. And in addition to facilitating the Justice for All program, which we're going to hear about shortly, Jonathan serves as the convener for the UN Universal Periodic Review CSO platform in Ghana, is the vice chairman of the Ghana Human Rights NGO Forum, and is a member of the steering committee of Ghana's Coalition on the Right to Information. So what we'll do now is we will start with a short video about the POS Foundation's work, and then Jonathan will join us for a presentation.
December 15th, 2017 was a special day for 66 remand prisoners, many of whom had spent years behind bars in Koforidua in Ghana's eastern region. On that day, a special court at long length processed their cases and most of them were released. But returning to his village, 72-year-old Kojo Obeng found that he had lost virtually everything he ever owned. The frail old man now has to sleep on the floor in his brother's house. Kojo Obeng is trying to cope with his new life as a free man. Even though he was never convicted and had to spend a grueling 8 years and 5 months in prison, he was not compensated.
About 98% of the people we're dealing with in prison are poor people. They are people who do not have the financial muscle to hire the services of a lawyer. So Justice for All gets in and makes sure that if you have not been heard, an immobile prison special court will listen to your case, review your case, and then, if possible, free you to go back to society
The Justice for All programme has helped reduce the share of prisoners on remand from about 33% of Ghana's total prison population to around 12%.
The POS Foundation, whose highly professional work I have witnessed during my visits to Nsawam and Nakuse prisons. The Justice for All programme is a major hallmark in Ghana's justice system, and as we heard, other African countries are studying the programme with a view to implementing similar programs.
Even though the activities of paralegals are not regulated or formalized in Ghana, it is only right that we give due recognition to the invaluable role played by these facilitators from the POS Foundation. They have functioned as de facto paralegals towards the sustenance and growth of the program. They interview the prison inmates and facilitate the drafting of their applications and criminal appeals. Once again, I would be very pleased to acknowledge the POS Foundation.
It is made up of the Judicial Service, the Office of the Attorney General, the Ghana Police, the Ghana Prisons, Legal Aid, and the POS Foundation, led by Jonathan Osewusu, for its efforts to resolve the dilemma between crime control and due process, and for the effective collaboration between civil society and government.
Facilitator of the Justice for All program, the tireless, indefatigable, irrepressible Mr. Jonathan.
Justice for All program is a model that can be replicated in the region, something that's really had an impact and an immediate and obvious impact.
The case was tracked out in 2016, so apparently he was discharged. But then with the same warrant from the court that discharged him, you and your outfit managed to send him to prison where he has remained till date.
Only I have no knowledge about this matter now.
Well, by court. The case against the accused person was passed on 15 December 2016 by the District Court Mampo. However, the accused person has remained in prison since that date. In the circumstances, the accused is unconditionally discharged.
All right.
Justice for All for pennies for phone, so almost I'm going to be scared. Never be tough for me, and I mean, yeah, be tough. And I mean, yeah, be taught out. That will be us.
Thank you, and I would like to welcome all participants to this webinar. And I want to say that we are grateful for the World Justice Forum for putting this excellent webinar together. I would also want to acknowledge my team, the POS Foundation's team, that are also joining us, and acknowledge the hard work that they've also put in place to be able to reach this far. On behalf of the management, we say thank you to you all. We are discussing the Justice for All program. And as a matter of fact, I'm personally developing a paper which has this title that we are solving the dilemma between crime control and due process. That is towards the decongestion of Africa's overcrowded prisons. The reason being that we all know we adopted the constitution from different parts of the world. And sometimes the problem that we find here is more or less same in other jurisdictions. So as we try to find solutions for the prison's work, in the same breath, we are finding solutions to something similar in other jurisdictions. So the Justice for All, as we are proposing, have been understudied by other countries as we go along, so that we all share what could be other best practices that we can learn from other jurisdictions and how they can also pick this up. Okay. The next slide. Yes, I'm just taking you straight forward to see the effect of mandatory detention, particularly the picture in Ghana. You can see the overcrowding rate currently, which has reduced, And the figures are for your own consumption as you see over there. But just let me pick few. The Nsawam medium security prisons, which is the biggest prison in Ghana, have the authorized capacity of around 850. Currently, it's holding about 3,300 inmates. That is just a picture of how the prisons seems to be very congested in our jurisdiction. If you take, for example, the Kumasi Central Prisons, the second biggest, its authorized capacity is around 460. Currently, it's holding 1,867. That is just to let you know that congestion in our prisons since the colonial masters also brought about mandatory detention using prisons, and our criminal justice system got into being, have also come with its own setbacks, which is congestion. And sometimes the picture you see is a true reflection of how people even sleep in our prisons. And that is how come the Justice for All program became a bit of a very topical issue in 2007 when it was established to help reduce congestion in our prisons. Next slide, please. So if the GFAP is solving the dilemma between crime control and due process, what are we talking about here? The police, the security agencies, the law enforcement agencies must work. In every system, there are loopholes, there are setbacks, there are shortcomings. So the police will always arrest, do investigation, put the cases before court. But in the process of trying to control crime so that we all have a safe environment, due process must be followed. So there have been people who have been on pre-trial detention and have benefited from this program who had spent 20 years on remand, 10 years on pre-trial, 5 years on remand, and have been there until the special court went into the prison, sat and looked at their case, reviewed the case, and asked them to go home because the cases were not anything worth to pursue. So we are looking at Justice for All as in addressing some or giving solution to the due process that must be followed. That if you arrest, 48 hours, bring the person before court. When the person is sent on remand or pre-trial to prison, within 14 days or fortnight, the person must be produced. So when all these lapses were not in, that is where the population had shot up in 2007, and then led by the then Attorney General. That is why we said that the GFAP is a state-led intervention, and POS Foundation, we does all the facilitation in our country, and is coordinated by the Judicial Service of the Republic of Ghana. So what basically we do is that we go to a prison, we set up the courts in the prison, we convert the prison officers into prison, into courts, and the judge of competent judge with the jurisdiction that has been mandated by law to sit. The state attorneys will be there, the defense counsel and paralegals from my office will also be there. Then they call the cases like every other case. So in a day, we could be dealing with about 70 cases, 150 cases in a day, with 3 courts sitting simultaneously. And then the cases are called, and the cases are heard, and they are being reviewed. At the end of the day, in most of the court settings, we often will have about 70% going home as a result of being discharged, granted bail, and some are even convicted. And the conviction giving them, if it is a year, they have served more than 2 years in custody, so it amounts to discharge, meaning he has overstayed the period he would have been convicted for the charge. And that is what has helped the prison congestion to come this far. In terms of the figures, as you see, in 2007, since the inception of this program, the pre-trial population was around 33%, which the figures are there. Currently, as we speak with you, and as of last year when we're coming to justice, world justice for us to be recognized, we have been able to drop the 33% population of the remand in Ghana's prisons to 9.8 currently as we are speaking with you now. And this has come as a remarkable achievement to the criminal justice system, its partners, human rights organizations. And if you look at the UN Universal Periodic Review that Ghana was reviewed just this January, a lot of commendations were given by member states as to the excellent work done by the Justice for All and which other countries can emulate. And as a result of that, we also had our brothers from Kenya, led by the then DPP, the Director of Public Prosecution, who came down to our country to understudy the program. We went to the prison with them, and they are replicating something similar in their own context by the name All for Justice. If you look at the global trend in terms of project proposed prison congestion, you then realize that our brothers in Nigeria are hitting about 70% in terms of their remand or pre-trial prison population. Liberia is somewhere around 48. So what we pray or we want to do is to be able to gradually have a dialogue. After world justice, that is what we are trying to do to get the others go through. As a matter of fact, the inmates and the in-prison courts is what you are seeing. So the courtyard is converted, and then we go do the interviews, we prepare the applications, we file the applications, and then we sit, and as you can see in the picture, the boys kneeling down was one kind of restitution where the mother, he threatened the mother that he was of death because there was a misunderstanding. The mother couldn't stand by, reported the boy. And then at the end of the day, the court sat, he has been in custody for a longer time. The mother came around, the boy had to apologize that he was not going to threaten the mother again. And it was an emotional scene which brought about relief for the freedom of the young man. And then he has gotten his family back. So that is the beauty of the Justice for All. And in all this, my office served as the defense team with lawyers and paralegals to support the inmate without any fee being paid. And these are also funded by donor communities that take care of the work that we do. Next slide. Yes, during COVID, we had no option than to go virtual. Why? Because the prison facility is a security installation. And if COVID should get into our prisons, just like the pictures and overcrowding rate you saw, it was going to spread like some bushfire, and they were not going to contain. So prisons in Ghana did so well such that COVID never entered our prisons. And it's something on record. And so they were not going to allow court sittings in prisons so that people will get to the prison and contaminate them with COVID. And you saw how dangerous it was. So we made a proposal to the then Supreme Court judge, who was the chair of the task force. And then he forwarded it to the Chief Justice. And in fact, our proposal was solidly in line with the Judicial Service, e-justice and virtual courts. So it was discussed, adopted, and then with support, we were able to initiate the virtual courts for the Justice for All program during the COVID, which added on to the decongestion rate in our prisons, and that was so excellent. And the video you saw, the man who came out, Hulate, after he was discharged in 2016, some way, somehow, they still managed to take him to prison. Yeah, this is the man. And it was so uncalled for, and judges were angry about why a court has traditionally discharged or struck out a matter, meaning you are supposed to go home. And then they still kept this young man in prison from 2016 to 2021. About 6 years, he needed to languish in jail. His case was not heard. He was not taken to court, only because they presumed he killed the girlfriend, only for the pathology test to come up for us to know, the court to know that the girl died out of pneumonia and it wasn't the fault of the husband. So the traditional court discharged him by striking out the matter, only for the CID to take him back to prison on what warrant we didn't know. And it was until the Justice for All virtual court sat that this young man gained his freedom. Next slide. We must also mention that there was serious criticism about the Justice for All in Ghana, that it is justice for some and not justice for all. Why? Because it was targeted at remand or pre-trial inmates or population, that what and incarcerated persons or people who were in times of their status called pre-trial. So what did we do? When we got to Kenya to assist them with the Justice for All program, we also learned what we call the African Prisons Project from Kenya. And then when we came to Ghana, we replicated same under the name In Prison Paralegal Program. This was targeted at convict prisoners who might have received a miscarriage of justice or excessive sentencing and would need support. So we go in, train officers and inmates as paralegals who would then help inmates who might have received a miscarriage of justice apply and then petition the courts on appeal and make submission, what we call written submission, with the little background training that they've received. And out of this, we started with the Nsawam prisons. We received successes, including a 65-year-old woman who was incarcerated for 11 years imprisonment, and after spending 4 years, 7 months in prison, we were able to, an appeal succeeded, and this woman was acquitted and discharged. And as a matter of fact, we are announcing with sorrow that the woman's last born, who was a teenager and a sickle cell boy, unfortunately, we lost the boy 2 weeks ago as a result of some of these injustice that were meted on the mother in prison and had nobody to take care of this boy. And so the disease had to go up until she was released. So these are some of the things that makes us share in Martin Luther King's idea that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so that small injustice to armed forces has resulted into several injustices on a lot of things, including her livelihood and family. In terms of after world justice, a lot of work have gone on, and then we have been able to do a lot of, make a lot of impact in our criminal justice system, which includes the continuous settling and reducing the population in terms of prison, the introduction of the IPP, now going to the central prisons in Kumasi, the second prison, to also help do the appeal. We've also come up with alternatives to incarceration, and that is not the work of a civil society, but with the blessing from the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana, we got a consultant to develop a draft bill. Before something becomes a law, it is in its state as a bill. So when we draft the bill, then government takes over after consultation, and then it eats the process. So we came up with the community service bill for the first time, went through all the regions, what you call the state or province in Ghana, to be able to solicit for input, together with the Ministry of Interior and the Ministry of Justice and Attorney General. That is where we have been able to then submit it, and government have taken over and is currently at cabinet level. So that those who commit minor offenses, there will be a need not to send them to prison to congest the place, but do community service to ease costs and then keep the issue of recidivism, that is reoffending. In terms of the parole, it existed in our Constitution, Section 208, but we had no regulation, what we call the constitutional instrument. And so that is what we have also helped the prison service to come up with a draft parole CI, that is regulation, which is also currently before the Ministry of Interior. Next slide, please. Yes, we have been key advocates for the new law, which is the Narcotics Control Commission Act 2020. We helped in advocating for this law to repeal the PNDC law through 3-6. Why? Because the old law looked at purely enforcement and incarceration. As a matter of fact, this is a holistic plan to decongest our prisons and keep the inflow of people going to prison. So now drug use and drug dependency is being seen from a public health and human rights perspective in line with the UNODC agenda. And that is something that is one out of a lot in Africa that other African countries are also looking forward to copy from us, because it's a step in the right direction. So that if anybody is found taking drugs, the person will be given treatment rather than purely incarceration. So it has been a partial decriminalization in the sense that discretion has been given to the judges to now give treatment as also an option, unlike before, which was not the case. And this was passed in 2020, and POS Foundation, as you can see, have gone all over the country educating, training, or orienting judges who will apply the law, police officers who will do the arrest, and prosecutors on the implementation and application of the law. So we go dialogue with judges from the high courts to the lower courts to be able to understand, so that we will have human rights and public health as pushing, being the agenda. Next slide, please. Yes, so these are the judges training, these are the police training, and sometimes it's not easy when you are coming in with reforms of this nature, when people are known to be taking marijuana and it is associated with crime and etc., and we are trying to change the narrative. Sometimes it's a very dicey situation, and it has been successful so far. Next slide. Yes, so as I'm ending here, it's not that we can put everything that we have been able to go through after the World Justice, but we must say that immediately we were recognized by the World Justice, a lot of things also changed in our country for the work that we do, because we always partner with the judiciary and the state to be able to carry out our work in that breath. And it has been good because the media in Ghana picked it up, and then the Justice for All program from the World Justice recognition was blown to the masses for them to understand that indeed, if we are looking for best practices in other jurisdictions, it's not every time that we need to go to developed countries like the US, the UK, and Europe, and etc. But there are other best practices that we can also talk about in Africa, to be precise, in Ghana, where the World Justice picked their torchlight or spotlight and threw it all over the world, all the way to the corners of Ghana, and we're able to highlight this unique work that we partner the state. As you heard the president of Ghana, he said this is one of the unique partnership between civil society and the state. So we give all the recognition and the support and the recognition that we've received to all the stakeholders within the criminal justice system, particularly the judiciary, the inmates that we serve, and incarcerated persons of which we've been able to do this work. Thank you very much for the time.
Great. Well, Jonathan, thank you so much for this presentation and the overview of the really innovative and quite effective work that you're doing in Ghana. You know, and I'm always struck by the data. You know, at World Justice Project, we of course we love data. That the reduction of the remand prison population from 33% to 9.8%. I mean, that is really a remarkable and striking decrease. So, you know, just congratulations on this program. And as you said, I think we all have a lot to learn from programs like this in Ghana and, you know, across the continent that are making innovative strides in access to justice. So I would love to pose some questions for you as part of a discussion. And I also invite members of the audience to use your Q&A function on your screen and submit questions for Jonathan and his team. I'd like to start, you know, before the presentation, we were talking about some current events in Ghana, and including some news about the abolition of the death penalty. And I would love to hear from you about, you know, today, what are some of the most pressing issues in Ghana related to access to justice and criminal justice reform, and how is POS Foundation approaching those issues?
Well, I would say that in every society, even developed countries, as they may call, have issues with their criminal justice system, because if they are human beings and systems are not perfect. So as much as many countries may envy the records of Ghana in terms of our criminal justice system, I must also mention that there are a lot of challenges that we face that we think we should improve upon, which systematically things are picking up. In terms of the challenges, congestion in our prison is key. delay in the court is also one. Now, the issue of representation is the biggest because the Legal Aid Commission is not so much resourced, and they have about 54 lawyers serving over 30 million Ghanaians. So just imagine, and not all these 54 lawyers are criminal lawyers. Others are civil lawyers. So these are some of the critical areas. That is why the Justice for All coming in with lawyers and paralegals to assist have become extremely successful. So when you look at all these, things are being put in place, including the legislative and policy loopholes that because the Constitution was adopted, we need to tighten, which POS is also contributing to most of these drafting of this legislation. One remarkable thing that has been on the table for a very long time that we have received now is the death penalty. You know, it has become a big issue, but the dynamics of Ghana's advocacy in the abolition of the death penalty is good for people to learn from. One, when we went to the UPR, the UN Universal Periodic Review, of which we are conveners in bringing about 70 CSOs in Ghana to write alternative or shadow reports to Geneva for our review. First cycle, all the recommendations received, there were two categories Ghana did not accept: all issues on LGBT and then death penalty. Second review, Ghana did not accept. Third review, which was 2017, Ghana did not accept. Then when we came back, led by Amnesty International in Ghana, we had to meet with lawyers, one lawyer, Pegu, and said that the Constitution of Ghana can give us the leeway to amend murder. And almost all the people have been sentenced into our prisons on life and death are issues on murder. And there is one on treason. Treason is the highest offense on the land. And because treason is an entrenched position, government of Ghana, the state, have always reported to the UN that we need to go for a referendum before we can change the death penalty. So this became a very different thing altogether, that now nobody has been sentenced to treason, so you don't have to go for a referendum. By amending the charge of murder, that is murder, you will then be able to get nobody there. And so they put it before Parliament through a private member bill. And then the amendment was made to the various acts that suggested that if you kill somebody, we should also sentence you to death. And that amendment was done just 3 weeks ago. And Ghana have come out for praise for the international community to know that indeed, it is not only one way of getting a referendum before you can abolish the death penalty, but we have been able to tactfully, strategically go around the abolition of the death penalty, because there is nobody currently in custody with the charge of treason. And so it does not amount to anything of that nature. So that is one good thing that we are all celebrating, which POS Foundation is part of the Amnesty International Coalition against the abolition of the death penalty. So it is a reform in progress, gradually moving towards something that will bring a lot of relief to our criminal justice system.
I hope you're right. Thank you for walking us through that. I'm looking at some questions for the audience, and there's quite a lot of interest in learning more about the mobile special courts and prisons. Walking us through how are they set up? What were some of the key lessons and challenges that you learned from setting up the mobile courts? Are they still operating? COVID is obviously not as much of a concern as it was in 2020, but are the virtual courts still in practice? And if not, what are you continuing to do with the mobile courts?
Within the few space of time, let me put it that way, there has been a change in the judiciary. That is, the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana went on retirement, and then fortunately, as gender sensitive country, we still have another woman as the Chief Justice of the Republic of Ghana. So we don't take gender out of the issue at all. It's something we need to pride ourselves for. So we are yet to meet the Chief Justice to see whether we are continuing virtual or physical. But it has been on until just about 3 months ago when all these reforms needed to take place. So that is what will happen. But it will not be out of place when COVID has taught us a good lesson. We have the gadget. We send the gadget to prison, and then the judges are sitting in Accra, the headquarters, and 3-4 courts are sitting simultaneously, and we will be sitting in our office monitoring and facilitating all this, and it has been successful. If you sit during the virtual court, our fear was that at the end of the day, when the virtual court discharge people, they may not go home. Because when you go to the physical court in the prison, they are there. The judges will sign the warrants of discharge. So they move away from the prisons immediately they are discharged. In this situation, how do we get them discharged from the prisons when the judges are sitting here and etc.? That is the beauty of our criminal justice system. And when you have the buy-in of the judiciary in some of this work, it is so easy. Why? Because it takes a little time than when you go to the prisons. But within a week, all the orders issued by the court, whether discharge, whether bail, the judges will sign all of them. Then the court will take it up, move to the region or like the state or province where the prison is, and then we'll release it to the high court there. Then the prison officers will pick it up. That is how come we just want viewers to know that this is not an abstract thing or theoretical kind of something, but it is practical, because Hulate you saw in the video was in our office because he was discharged and he came out after the virtual court. So a lot of learnings have come up. And we've also realized that sometimes some people are left in prison and forgotten. Others are left to rot. The system have not tracked them. So when we go, some of these cases come up. And when they come up, then you are able to deal with the nitty-gritty as to what brought them there. You will be surprised that we go to the Winneba prisons and a guy has been there for 8 months just because of a bad haircut. You ask how? The guy had this kind of footballer haircut where they shave this side and then the right side and then they leave the middle part. And a woman was assaulted a day before she got to the traffic light and saw somebody with the same similar haircut and called the police to arrest him, that he's the one who assaulted this young man. And these are young people who have similar haircuts. And this young man was arrested, sent to court, sent to remand in prison, and then spent 8 months until our court got there because of a haircut. So these are issues that we've dealt with in the past. And it's on and on, but now it has brought about the issues down. Previously, you could have somebody who has spent 10 years, 15 years, and the man who has spent the highest, his name is called Zorukuta. He spent over 20 years on pretrial, and then he was discharged by this court. So a lot of lessons are being paid. Now you hardly will have more than 7 years because the court has gone to the mobile court has gone to almost every prison in Ghana that matters by the directive of the Chief Justice. And we've been able to cover even from the north. It got to a point that we loved our Chief Justice, who is also gone. He had to send the entire team, and moving is a whole capital intensive, to go and listen to one case in one prison that came up, because it looks like when we go to this prison, they transfer the person to another prison. And we don't know who was manipulating that. We go to this prison, the man is not there, he goes to another prison. So when it was reported to the Chief Justice, she really got very upset and said, we should go to that prison, sit on that case, and make sure that the case has been dealt with in accordance with law. And then at the end of the day, this man was an ex-police officer who had been sentenced, who had been on remand for years and was even losing his sight. But at the end of the day, he was discharged. And these are some of the lessons that motivate us in doing the work that we do.
Absolutely. And you mentioned having a close working relationship with the judiciary, with the Minister of Justice, with the prison officials, in order to be able to do this work. How did you go about establishing those relationships and gaining the trust and the buy-in from these officials in order to get the approvals that you needed to put the program in place in the first place and to be able to continue?
That is why in my write-up, I said it's a state-led, in a sense that when you are having all these criminal justice matters which involve the state, you have to let the state lead. So if anybody is learning, it is not about who takes the glory, who does what. This is a state-led intervention, and we as civil society just facilitating. If I say facilitating, we come in with the lawyers and the paralegals. So we have to do all the legwork, go and interview them, go and do this before the Chief Justice will appoint judges to go and sit. So when we do all the work, one thing that identifies us that we can never run away from is integrity. Integrity is what has brought us all this credibility or credit with all the state agencies, not only the judiciary, because you understand what you're supposed to do when you get to prison and what you are not supposed to do. Even though you may have some level of leeway to be able to do some things different from the ordinary visitors, you are still holding on to that kind of integrity. My team is a young team, all under 40, but they are dynamic also in the sense that you go to a prison, there is somebody speaking every language. Who speaks every language? You have somebody on my team. Somebody speaking Hausa language, we have somebody. When you're looking for somebody who speaks French, and it was tactfully brought together, so we have a very solid, dynamic team at the POS Foundation that understands the terrain, the atmosphere, to be able to carve the solution for specific needs. Because if you don't, this is legal matters. These are freedom and people's life. You can't quantify freedom, even for a day. So if you are going to talk to people, and these are oaths being sworn on affidavits and motion, you need to understand their language, their plight, and be able to put whatever they need to say on paper to be able to reflect what is happening. So I think if you heard the Danish ambassador in the video, he said the professionalism or professional work of POS Foundation, that we will never want to compromise, so that the professionalism of the foundation, the integrity that we bring to bear, that you are not going to be corrupt no matter what. That is what makes the program also good. And the judges who are appointed are unique judges who have been well oriented and can never be associated with even money or corruption. That has brought a lot of integrity to the program, and the whole country is looking up to a program of this sort that will continue to alleviate prison congestion and bring freedom to people who might have unfortunately been caught up with the law and get their freedom. The other challenge or the setback that we receive, that I'm sure will come up, is the fact that when they are released, because they were not convicted, you can't call them a incarcerated persons or prisoners. So what do? We don't have that financial muscle to follow up on all of them, to look at reintegration and etc. So that is some big local vacuum created that we are looking forward to see if we can get cameras to follow up, so that we can be able to let the public know that majority of the people, all the people are in good standing. They are doing this. We do follow up, but there is no critical funding to do that, and to also help them reintegrate them to school-going age students who need to get back to school.
Sure, thank you. Yeah, that's, certainly there's a whole continuum of reform that's required to support a post-prison population, not just releasing them in due time, but also reintegration to society and other kinds of social support. So that's a point very well taken. We have a lot of questions from the audience about the constitutional regime on the rights of arrested persons in Ghana, and some questions about, what is the reason for the overcrowding in the prisons? Is there any kind of constitutional or legal limit to pretrial detention, or not?
Article 14(4) of Ghana's constitution, as it may be found in other jurisdictions, stated clear that Article 14(4) says that any person who is arrested, detained, or restricted, but has not received trial in a reasonable period of time, is subject to unconditional release, or release subject to conditions that will cause him to reappear. I'm just paraphrasing. So what is the challenge we face accounting to congestion in the prisons is the codification of reasonable period of time. Because to me, as a judge, that is Judge A, I will see reasonable period of time to be 2 years to the other judge, who is Judge B, will see reasonable period of time to be 5 years. So as and when investigations are ongoing, when you've been arrested and put before court, and the CID or the investigators continue to request for more time to conclude their investigations, then you are still in custody. Whether you are guilty or not, you are in custody. When it gets to this level, it is the poor who suffers. As I sit here, I'm not rich, neither am I too influential, but when something happens to me and I'm arrested, thousands of lawyers or hundreds of lawyers may come to my aid. So when you are poor and you are unable to get a lawyer to go file bail application for you, then that means you have to be in custody all through the investigation. Or so if it is 3 years reasonable period of time for the judge, they bring you and then they send you back to prison. So these are some of the things that account for a longer period of people in custody, because we have not codified the reasonable period of time under Article 14.4 of the 1992 Constitution. But with notwithstanding, there have been some court rulings or precedents set that are guiding the court in dealing with what is reasonable period of time. And that is how come these courts, mobile courts, are based on in order to be able to discharge. So we don't just go there and do charity work by just getting people out, because the people you are bringing out, some of them are indeed criminals who have been arrested. So you do not have to also release people so that they come and terrorize the society. So you need to make sure that due diligence are being played, because after we file the applications, the court sits, they are reviewing case by case, and then the state is also defending, etc. And we are able to get the nuances of the case to enable the judge take a decision whether to discharge or to grant bail or to convict the person because it's a minor offense that he might have committed. And then if not at all, some of them are asked to go back to the traditional court because they will have more of the facts and evidence to deal with the matter. So it's a whole dynamics up together when it comes to this pre-trial, the courts, and what contributes to congestion in our prison. But that is just one factor, because some of the cases could be the fact that a police officer arrests you, he has been transferred. The system is not too robust that if he does not hand your docket to the person, unless one who is succeeding him, and then he goes to another region and he does not take meticulous move in terms of taking care of the one in prison, then you are locked and forgotten until somebody brings your matter up. All these things are gradually being dealt with some case management system that are being introduced into the system. But until then, a lot of these setbacks are still within the prisons that we will always encounter.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds as though, there's a lot of contributing factors to the overcrowding, including just some administrative problems. One of the questions that we have is about fines and fees, and that, often individuals are required to pay fines and fees as part of a sentence, and that failure to pay can be punished by incarceration or, by other types of punishment. Is that an issue in Ghana? Are fines and fees contributing to overcrowding? And if so, what solutions or what challenges have you learned from that?
To be sincere with you, Ghanaians are very generous. And so those who have been inside because of fines that they were unable to pay, you get a philanthropist who will join another organization and say that we are paying for about 7 of them, and they go out. They pay about 2 of them and they go out. But there is no systemic structure that deals with those who were unable to pay. So these are pockets of interventions that happens. Then it comes to drug policy. When it comes to those who use drug that were sentenced, though we are advocating and calling on the president to use the law introspectively, that is, those who were there before the law was passed, can they be given some level of amnesty because they use drug? They are not traffickers. So as part of our advocacy and campaign and the new law, those who are fined under the law by using drugs and are unable to pay, we have advocated that even this new law still, the fine is still, I think something penalty, about 40 penalty units or something. It's still huge. Somebody using marijuana, we call it ghetto, a non-completed building, they don't have money, they are poor. If they don't pay, you are taking them to prison. That means you are even worsening their plight. And that is what I told you earlier, called criminalization of poverty. Because they were unable to get lawyer, to get bail, they went in. Because this person is unable to get money to pay, he went to prison. So that means it is not a crime that you are criminalizing, but it is poverty that you are criminalizing. You get the whole scenario. Because the rich will not go to prison for use of marijuana. It's obvious. It's an open secret. Because when the police arrest the rich, at that level, they will know what to do to pave their way through. And it is often the case. And so it is only the poor who will be processed before court. Because the rich may also have money for the lawyer. The poor will not. So we are looking at a whole spectrum of criminal justice reform to reduce that level of criminalization of poverty in all aspects, and then make sure that even if you committed the crime, community service will come in, parole will come in, the new narcotics law will come in. These are all pockets of things that we as POS Foundation, together with stakeholders within the sector, are all pushing to bring about some level of relief to our system, so that Ghana, as we pride ourselves to be the beacon of democracy, respect for rule of law in Africa or West Africa, we can then have meaning or real meaning for such statements and rulings.
Yeah. Just a few more questions before we close it out. Thank you so much for your time and for
but if
for
you
these
may
interesting.
That if you may permit, any of my team members, in case I've left something, can also just raise their hands and then drop one or two in case I might have left anything in. Of
course, and we welcome input from your team members as well. So just one question about another program that you spoke about quite briefly in your presentation, the in-prison paralegals program, which is such an interesting pilot, working with not remand prisoners in this case, but actually those who had been convicted. Just interested to know, what you learned from this pilot in terms of replication and continuing it in other contexts.
Yes, I think it's one of the remarkable things that we have done after the World Justice Forum, in the sense that we did the pilot in Sawam prisons. And then just like you saw, the woman got out. Even during COVID, the woman we were unable to go to court that day, but the court discharged him. And then we were informed. So you can see that the system, as it may seem not working, it's working. But there are some loopholes that needs to be tightened. Currently, under the funding from GIZ, we are moving straight to, the first one at Nsawam was funded by the US Department of State. And now we are moving to Kumasi Central Prisons, which will be there next week. We've set up and renovated offices for them as paralegal office. So they are going to now expand to absorb even remand cases, advise people, legal matters. Some people are even arrested. They don't have access to their family. So when they get to the prison, these paralegal officers who are inmates and officers will help them reach families and etc. so that other legal advice that are within their domain can be given, so that they will know their left from their right and then push ahead. So we will be hitting, we've already been to the central prisons, and we are trying to see if that becomes successful. We want to replicate that together with the prison service to all the other areas. As I'm talking to you, the manual or curriculum for the training is ready, and we are getting judges and lawyers to meet in Kumasi, train about 15 inmates, 15 prison officers or correctional officers to be able to understand, and they will help review the review the records of proceedings and judgment from the court that convicted them, and then you'll be able to review and then come up with written submission to a higher court on appeal so that their cases can be heard. It's a matter of cash. They don't have that financial muscle to get the service of a lawyer. If you have a miscarriage of justice, you have money, you'll be able to go through and get a lawyer. But if you don't, then injustice have been meted at your doorstep, but yet you can't have remedy for it. That is why the beauty of the mobile court is sending the court to the doorstep of the average Ghanaian in prison without you coming out. And that is one beautiful thing that I'm happy to associate myself with, and that the judicial service have also supported particularly with the virtual court, by making it possible, because they become the wheels surrounding what we are doing at this moment.
Thank you. So I think just one final question before we let you go, Jonathan. What advice would you give to other organizations who want to replicate the Justice for All program in their country's prisons?
I am very certain that we all want a peaceful society, and we all want safe environment. Human beings are human beings. Whether born or not born, they may be good and they may be bad. The UN, the former UN Secretary General from Ghana, Kofi Annan, said, "No one is born a good citizen. No nation is born democratic. Rather, both are processes that continue to evolve over a lifetime. Young people must be included from birth. For a society that cuts itself from its youth, severes its lifeline, and it is condemned to bleed to death." So as we are putting our young people into reforms and bringing democracy and bringing good attitude, definitely the system will not be able to hold everybody in that breath. So those that will fall out of the crack and are legitimately hardened must be dealt with by the law. But people who are being dealt with in the process get the system contaminated, and innocent people are also caught up with the law. And it is the same system that is being used. Therefore, we were not democratic or just by day. We were not born good citizens. It evolves over a lifetime. In the process of taking care of crime and making us feel safe, and they controlling it, those lapses will definitely come even in the state. But what we want to advise is that we should think outside the box and be able to use the existing laws, to use these same existing laws to create avenue for people who unfortunately may have been caught up by the law but are innocent. That is the justice for all. It is not outside the law. It is within the law, with its feet on Article 14.4. And we are using the same thing, thinking outside the box as a state and as civil society, to be able to help others to be able to go through due process and then be able to clear some backlog and give life to people. So as much as Kenya and others are replicating same, we want to also admonish other countries who are facing similar challenges to liaise with us. We can share, and Kenya's model is so unique because they've contextualized it to suit their system, and then that is what is a problem at this moment. That is what is giving them more solution at this moment.
Thank you. I think that's a great note to end on, this reminder that democracy is a practice that must constantly be enacted in order for our societies to take care of all of our citizens and to advance the rule of law. So Jonathan, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with us and sharing your expertise. I thought I knew a lot about this program, and I learned quite a lot, and I really appreciated the opportunity to kind of get into some of the details with you. So thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And for our audience joining, thank you as well for your questions. And if you'd like to return to the webinar or to share it, the recording is going to be posted on WJP's website and our YouTube channel. And just before I close it out, I just want to mention, so this webinar, as I said, is part of an ongoing series on the work of WJP's 2022 challenge winners. And our final webinar in this series will be on August 30th, where we will speak with Transparency IT from Nigeria, who won the Anti-Corruption and Open Government Prize. They're going to be sharing some updates on their work over the last year, monitoring corruption cases in Nigeria. So if you're interested, please join us. It should be a great conversation. So just once again, thank you so much to Jonathan and to your colleagues at POS Foundation for sharing the presentation and the discussion with us, and to everyone who joined us in the audience. I'll close it out. So thank you. Take care.